City, the place of connections by excellence, the cradle of socialization, of conflict. The city is characterized by its history, shape, and by its continuous changing spaces. This is the place where innovation makes sense in a world that is developing so fast. The city and its continuous modern project make us question where we live. And then, in a city, we have some dinosaurs. These places in which structure have been somehow frozen over time, and which seem to pass through time and space. They seem to be on hold. To what extent these places are the source of unfinished potentials that can make the difference across the whole city. We like to say here that knowing the place in all its dimensions, not just in a theoretical and static way, is the starting point of considering possible project scenarios or not. Knowing the place also means knowing its limits and being able to take a position not for the project but for the place. Ability to the deep knowledge of the place is achieved through many mechanisms of thinking that make it possible to see reality differently through imagination and art, for example. In this sense, the place should be seen as a game. You have to navigate it like a child who discovers the environment for the first time. I learned that knowing the place and experimenting it makes a difference by providing the basis for thinking about the project. In fact, knowledge of the place is already the project. This human abandoned military domain reproduces, first of all, an image of nonsense in a city that wants to explore itself. However, profound knowledge of this place has revealed very unexpected elements. By making this exercise of understanding and looking at the place from a new perspective, we were able to highlight some of its own potential in order to be able to make assumptions about its evolution. The idea was to be able to show a different face of the same place. With the video, the abandoned place turned out to be one of the lifeless dinosaurs in Walsall. Terror of the abandoned, the ruined architecture, and the subtle nature of the interconnection are the dynamics of the place. Here, thanks to the knowledge of the venue, the project turned out to be a non-project. We realized that the venue was already embraced by a rich architecture and landscape that is moving us. It was simply to reveal what we could no longer see.
Le fort, c'est une ruine, hein? C'est une ruine, ça ne représente plus rien.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can I ask everyone except the speaker to mute their microphones? And I'd just like to welcome you to the fourth meeting of Where the Landscapes are, Where the Disciplines Meet lecture series organized by Uniscape. And tonight's speaker is Chiara Caravello. And we're delighted to have you, so you're very welcome, Chiara. We look forward to your paper. Chiara is a graduate in architecture from the Politecnico di Milano, where she carried out a dissertation on the theme of the recovery of industrial heritage landscapes and the reactivation of degraded landscapes, based on a case study in the Three Countries Park that is the subject of this evening's talk. So Chiara's research interests are in the areas of cultural heritage, of post-industrial heritage, of architecture, landscape architecture, and these have been kind of developed and provoked as she has journeyed between the cities of Milan, Liège, and Aachen that are all conspiring or collaborating in the project here in the background. So we're going to hear from Rita Occhiuto a little bit later on, hopefully during the discussion, who's been involved in the development of part of this project. Over the last little while, Chiara has been developing a research project on the subject of post-industrial cultural landscape, focusing on the relationships between the underground and the surface landscapes. And so that speaks very directly to the title of tonight's paper, which is Hidden Landscapes, or Underground Built Heritage as an Opportunity for Territorial Regeneration. And she's going to be looking at the European case study of the Three Countries Park that is shared between Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. It's a post-industrial landscape comprising both above ground and underground features. And so in this lecture, Chiara is going to be focusing, I think, on the opportunity that this landscape, as it extends across contemporary territorial boundaries, to be a motif and a platform for dialogue and collaboration on an international level. The respondent for this evening, I think, is a colleague of Chiara's, Giovangiuseppe Vannelli, who is an architect in Naples, or Napoli. He belongs to various national and international research groups that have a characteristic of interdisciplinarity at their core, so speaking very directly to the landscape, a paradigm that's so important to Uniscape and its members. Giovangiuseppe's research interests concern the area of places that are characterized by complex inherited memories. He looks at them from the point of view of both the human and the urban dimensions, through the lenses of the visible and the invisible, the acceptable, the unacceptable, the forgotten and the recyclable. His research to date has focused very much on abandoned places and on neglected parts of cities, such as cemeteries and psychiatric asylums, and the need to consider new meanings for these places in the contemporary evolving city, starting from the point of view that they are open and often green spaces, as we've already seen in the video that Chiara chose to start the paper. So what will happen is Chiara will start now in just a moment, and then at the end of her paper at about 20 past the hour, we will hand over to my colleague Virla van Etveld, who will chair the discussion that will be started by a response from Giovangiuseppe Vannelli. Okay, so the floor is yours now, Chiara. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will just share my screen. Okay. Yeah, there we are. So good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. And thank you very much for Université to organizing this very interesting series of meetings. So I think Conor Newman said everything about me, what we needed to say. So I would just go straight and start the presentation. Yeah, so let's say this picture I've decided to start with. It's very meaningful to me because it shows a conventional way in which we can look at landscape. What we know normally it's to look at something which stays in front of us, but it's exactly another thing that we can see if we look better at this picture is that the young boy in the pictures is actually sitting on the landscape, is part of the landscape. So landscape is not just what's in front of us, but it's something that we are part of. So I wanted to introduce the like this my presentation to say we are trying today to have a journey together, and through this journey we're trying to achieve, as Proust said, new heights, to look at the landscape as something which is not just something to look at, but something to live in, something in which we participate. So the underground is a topic, and it's really relevant with what I said before. So the underground hides, protects, and preserves a lot of the meaning and the relations and the structures of what we can see above the ground. So when we can listen to it, when we can feel it, it's telling us a lot of things. And these things, it happens often that these things staying below are quite bigger and quite more relevant. They can be the reasons of what stays above. So they are something we believe we should investigate to understand better where we live in order to proceed with a landscape project. So we don't consider landscape as a surface, we consider a whole, which is both up and down. So there are two ways in which we can look at this, what I said before. There is a way in which we consider what is above as a mirror of what is below. But there is a way in which we can consider actually what is underground as the reason of what is below or what is above the ground. Because, for example, in our cases, most of the places that are there because of the resources of the soil. And if the soil didn't have these resources, the place, the cities, the infrastructures that we know in which we live every day wouldn't be there. So let's consider in this case not anymore the soil as pure soil, as a surface on which we put our floor, but as a whole world of things which is equally big and important and architecturally relevant as what stays above. So it's not just a piece of land, it's filled with architecture and structures and tunnels and whatever, and has been built also from the man. So the point from which this research starts, the approach is to consider the landscape not anymore just as a natural place, but as a place in which man and nature act together. So the material and of the soil is something which has come together by the action of the both, and it's made of different layers. It has a thickness, it has a history, and this history is a long process in which everyone is co-actor. So one of the means that we consider fundamental in the research to approach a landscape is then drawing. Because why drawing? Drawing brings within it the capacity of pointing out elements and relate them in a direct way. In this way, we can see the continuous relationship, the continuous modification that nature and man play together on the landscape, and this balance that which is keeping all the time the nature is trying to find a new balance, and man is needing something new, and it goes on and on and on. So now we go to what is the underground built heritage. Then we have some elements in this landscape specifically, but in many different landscapes we can find the same elements, elements emerging from the soil, elements that are beneath the soil, like galleries. And these are the typical characters of a landscape that we could call the landscape of waste. But this waste is in the end a new landscape in which we live, and a new architecture that we still don't consider enough. So let's talk about a case study. Here is where I'm carrying on my research on the topic. This is a very significant case because it's, as Colonel said in the beginning, it's land bringing together Germany, Netherlands, and Belgium. And the landscape here is a very unifying element, but on the surface, it's often treated separately, like administrative borders are in a great contradiction with physical borders, with landscape borders, because landscape have no borders. But what is actually the Three Countries Park? The Three Countries Park is a landscape partnership. It is an international and interregional cooperation platform, and it brings together institutions from the three countries mentioned before. The lead partner of the Three Countries Park is the Region, and it is one of the oldest cross-border cooperation programs in Europe, dating back at 1976. Some of the main partners, the partners in the Three Countries Park are 13, and these are the main ones. And it's very important to underline that the Three Countries Park is not a natural or regional park or a park in the way we traditionally know it. It's a cross-border landscape partnership. So it coordinates different organizations and cooperation with a view to preserving a landscape and developing a territory in a sustainable way and in a cooperative way beneath the borders. So let's place it somewhere. What we can see with colors is the Regions Rain, and what we can see highlighted in the heart of this region is the Three Countries Park. It is an open space. It has no borders. So I said before, again, I would like to underline this is not a park which has a limit. It's the green heart of one of the EU Regions Rain, and it's considered to be the space within the main cities, Maastricht, Liège, Aachen, Hasselt. So we can see it here better, what is called the MAL region. So MAL stays for the cities of Maastricht, Erlen, Hasselt, Aachen, and Liège. But as we can see in the map, there are actually plenty of other smaller cities, also very important. And right in the heart of it, we can find the Three Countries Park. It's very interesting to look at it at night. If we go a little bit closer, we will see that we have kind of a light belt. In the center of this light belt, there is a black hole. And this is actually the Three Countries Park region. This is then known to be a periurban border region because it's actually what stays within these cities and makes a green heart of a region. But if we consider the single cities, it is a periurban region of each of these cities. So, and what about the topic of tonight, the landscapes, what stays beyond the surface of the Three Countries Park? So the Three Countries Park has a great amount of underground cavities and mining activities dating from different epochs, and actually some still active. These kind of activities happen in all of the tree lands, and they are common points. Each of the tree lands have known in the history this kind of work, this category, let's say, of workers, this kind of architectures. So it's kind of contradictory to see how the administrative borders in the surface are splitting a landscape that actually looks as belonging together. We have some elements, some recurrent elements. Here are just two pictures as examples of what it is. So the underground landscape is not just underground. There is actually emerging elements coming from the underground and being there for the reason of the underground, but built from men in order to dig the underground, to go underground. And we can still find plenty of them. And there are other underground cavities, galleries, quarries, plenty of different kinds of what we can call architectures. They're really spaces. They are voids left by the work of man and built by men. So when we look at the recent history of the Three Countries Park, we have some pictures that show how in time the landscape has been influenced and managed and changed by the action of men. So we talk again about this being active agents of the territory. So we shape the territory for our needs, and the shape it has today, it's man-made, nature-made environment. So a co-action. We can see, to have a little bit of a retrospective view, we can see some elements at the very beginning. So we have above a drawing from the Blenheim, one of the most important recognized by UNESCO site in this area. And there in the old drawing, we can see the beginning of what this kind of industry is. So there is the element to go underground that starts to be an heaps of material that is taken from the ground. There is the building, which serves as industrial building where the materials are processed. And what we can see now today is something that we will call actually a small mountain, a natural environment. It is not. It is the same small mountain that we see above, and just has been left for years. Nature has taken its own place, and we still recognize it now because of the emerging element. It's still in the same position, but it has now a character of the combined action that we were talking about before. So we are just going through now, as I said before, there are many different kinds of mining and extraction landscapes in the Three Countries Park. In order to present you a little bit of this area, we built up 4 different storylines. There is more than this, but these are, let's say, the highest to present, the more present of these kind of sites. So we will present the storyline of coal mining, the storyline of gravel extraction, zinc and lead mining, and limestone. We decided to present them in a way like a slideshow. So it's, let's say, we will see together how the landscape look like, and we will discuss about it later. But in the moment, it's very interesting to look at the state of the art. You will see there are some elements that you can clearly recognize as industrial elements, and some elements which you would think have always been there. So I would like just to tell little stories and not to explain too much, really hoping to bring you into these landscapes. So we have the coal mining landscapes. This is a very important site, the mine in Genk in the Flanders. As we can see, it's a very big one, and we see above plenty of architectures relating with the extraction of coal, and we see in the background really some heaps. We have coal mining in Germany. As you see, the examples are taken from all of the regions coming together in the Three Countries Park. And if I hadn't written above, below where they belong, they could actually be anywhere in the Three Countries Park. So it's not really that the landscape belongs to Germany or belongs to Belgium or Netherlands in a natural way or in a landscape way. It belongs in an administrative way, let's say. So This is a site. Coal mining has been converted into a park with a project. Oop. This is the entry. Has been a previous coal mining site, which has been converted as an entry point for very important national park, Kempen, in Belgium. And we can see first some mining galleries. These are the coal mining galleries. The picture comes from Blenheim. They allowed us to use this. It was very important for us because this is, as I said before, UNESCO heritage site, and it's the only site here in the 3 countries park to have this very important recognition. As you can see, this picture is very interesting because it's pretty much clear how these underground galleries has been built by men. So, talking about gravel extraction landscapes, we see here very strongly and clear the role of man in changing what is nature. So this is, for example, how man is building channels from the river to serve the extraction sites. And we can see here, this is a part of the Meuse River, and we see here how the channels and the gravel extraction sites have been filled in the time by water. So man has been there, has dig the soil, taken out the gravel, and then water has filled it again. So we have some lakes now, which are actually not natural. They look to be like it has always been a lake, but it's like the emptiness in which water has come has been built by men. And let's say men didn't want to build lakes. Men just wanted to have the resource, but then ended up in building lakes too. So this is a new scenario. This is a still active part, so a little bit to show how the scenario now is. So how does it work with gravel extraction? We can see here it's kind of surrounded by a channel because it needs water and it needs this line, these belts to split materials. And as you see, it's building some new landscapes too. It's not possible to ignore something like this when we look at it. So, and this is a special part. It's always about gravel extraction. There has been a project, I will talk a little bit about it later, but let's say this is what was the riverbed, the bed of the river has been lowered for the extraction processes. And then it has been asked, there is a cooperation now with the industries so that they kind of restore it after using it. And they made it wider, and they built up a river park valley, which is actually, again, something that would not be there because the landscape, the natural landscape would be kind of flat. But after extraction, there has been a remodeling of the landscape in order to make it pleasant again and natural again. It's not just about recreational activity, it's really hosting many species and biodiversity too. So the men, in this case, within this project, extraction activity is important for industries, but it has already been recognized that it is important to restore nature after the work. So, and as I said, there is the biodiversity topic and there is the recreational topic. We see here pretty clearly how these sandy shores are. This is what I said before, they would not actually be there. It has been built like that. It has been chosen that it should look like that. And it actually works out pretty well, both for nature and both for recreational activities. So we have zinc. It's a very special history. Zinc is a very toxic material, and it's making so that nothing or almost nothing grows anymore. So we have this very hard soil where zinc extraction have been happening. But we also have, so we see the soil is really poor, but if we go closer, we see this special, very special flowers. This flower is called, I hope I say it properly, it's called Galme-Veilchen. And it is as a flower which is saying us here there is zinc. And it's actually a very rare and protected species because it only grows in this kind of landscapes. It is very interesting that this plant theoretically doesn't belong here, and it now was the reason to have a protected area to protect this plant. This is another effect of zinc. This area is located quite at the border of the three countries part. It's partially outside of the EU region, and it's an effect of the zinc. So these toxic particles kind of fly and contaminate land and make so that nothing grows. And there is pretty much interesting history. I will try to tell you this history from this map. There are very important sites where zinc has been extracted, like Kelmis, Stolberg, and Plombières. We can see the city of Aachen in Germany, kind of on the border, and the German city of Stolberg and the Belgian city of Plombières in Kelmis. They are in a not so wide landscape, so that zinc extraction was too toxic to be, let's say, processed in this area. And the industrial people has been asked to find a place where to process the materials. So a long journey is started where the materials were carried until up to what is today the Bosla Nature Reserve, which is actually this landscape that we saw before and we see again here. It is a reserve now, and the property of this soil is actually due to the zinc extraction starting to happen around Aachen. So what was happening in Germany and in the Wallonia, and this part of Belgium, Wallonia, is now a park in Flanders, so in another part of Belgium. And this is, for me, really meaningful as a cross-border landscape history. So this landscape has been built by man action coming from three different lands in different moments of history. So, and let's go to the last example. We have limestone. Limestone has given caves to the landscape. So this is how a limestone landscape nowadays look like. This is in the Netherlands, but we have lots of examples. This is a limestone quarry, which is actually still active. It's going to be closed in a few years. And some experiments have been already done exactly on this topic to introduce new recreational activities. They had a lot of success, and there is already an ongoing process to redesign the site after the end of the extraction, which will happen in a few years. And this is called the St. Petersberg mountain, and this is in the Netherlands part. And we actually find it again, just the same mountain, in the Belgian part, in Wallonia. And this is a natural reserve here. And we can see how some of these natural caves are accessible, some are closed, some little few have been converted already. There is a great variety on the processes that have been done or not done on this kind of cavities. And we have the chance here to go a little bit inside. It's a very special landscape because of the way the material is extracted. It's very straight, and it really builds architectural spaces. So we can see it's really like, it looks like a wall that has been built. It's actually a void that has been built by taking away the material from the rock. So, and we see here it's like I could build on the surface a place like that, and it is actually the place has not been built, it's been excavated. It's actually interesting to think about, is building just something up, it's just creating something from nothing, or it's building also taking away for something. It's like sculpture somehow. So we see here, this is actually the drawing was made from some students, but it's showing pretty well how a map of an underground location can look like. This is not just what one can imagine, kind of a straight line or a few straight lines, corridors and galleries. It's a really complex network of galleries and spaces and a real city, a real world beneath the surface. And what we should ask ourselves now is which are the projects that has already been done in the Three Countries Park to protect or to reuse these spaces. And we have a series of projects which has been carried out sometimes by the Three Countries Park itself, by two of the regions, or by one. And some of these projects have been successful in a sense that they have been continued by other projects. For example, we had this Interreg in 2005, was called the Industrielle Folgelandschaft. It was generally about post-industrial recovery in the Three Countries Park. It brought out the topic first, and it had great success. It had 24 partners, both from Germany, Netherlands, and Belgium. And somehow it split it. After that, it was lasting 3 years. And after these 3 years, 2 different projects were born with 12 partners each. One project was carried together from Germany and Netherlands. It's called the Green Metropole, and it's actually still going on, as well as the Pays de Terril. It's a project still going on in Belgium. What is really interesting to see is how from a common Interreg project, 2 very different kind of approaches dealing with the same landscape has been developed, because the Green Metropole, we will see later, was considering the substrate as the unifying element. So it was starting from the substrate as unifying element and mirroring it in the surface, while the Pays de Terril is considering the emerging elements from the soil. So it's taking some points and is trying to connect them on the surface. So it's actually almost the opposed process, working on the same landscape and on the same territory. And it's very interesting to see how it went on. Well, there is already before, it's this Grensmaas. It's the project we were seeing before on the river, which it started with this consortium with industries, so that industries extracting materials have to recover the site. And it's now a very big park called the Maas Valley. And it's a recreative park, but also a natural area, which is protecting many species. We have some other initiatives, as you can see. Yeah, Green Metropole and Pays de Terril are still going on, but some other initiatives have taken place. Coming from Netherlands, there was this initiative, the Year of the Mines, and it brought together with it another initiative which has been shared from the 3 countries, and it's about mapping cross-border mining heritage. We will see it also again, and we have the landscape. It's about landscape perception. I would just like to give you now some examples of what these projects have been, what they have pointed out. So this is, for example, the Green Metropole, the Agenzter, which to whom these drawings belong, has been charged of drawing a master plan. And this master plan is actually drawing a same landscape across the 3 countries. As I said before, the unifying element is considered this substrate coming from mining, and it was common to all of the all of the lands, and it's reflected on the surface by different elements. So the role of the agents there and the way they were acting, their logic was just to put together what already belonged together. So we have now, this is, for example, from the year of the mines. As I said before, it was a mapping project. This has been very, very important because it has pointed out maybe so clearly for the first time how the architectures, industrial architectures relating to mining and extraction activities actually bring the same character to the places. They actually make the place belong together as an architectonic language that is spoken by the tree lands beyond the borders. This is another project, Dear Landscape. It's actually the last project that has been carried out by the Three Countries Park, and it was in 2017. There was this architecture office, Dear Hunter, which is has been going around with this mobile house. I don't know how to call it, but they were going around visiting places with people, walking with people, drawing with people, and what came out were something like this. For example, we actually saw a picture of this place before, but this is not the same place because this is the subjective drawing of the same place. So what they were trying to do, and they succeeded in doing, was drawing the perception of landscape, putting together the stories told by people. And from this effort, many of these drawings have been done. And in the end, when all the drawings have been collected, it has been they have been kind of located in different storylines. So which were the stories that people had in their mind, what they told about landscape. And one of the storyline was Subterranea, and was about the underground landscape. And it was very important because it showed how people is actually considering the underground landscape in their memories, in their experiences. It's not just extraction sites, it's also war galleries, for example. But it was this project to show how it actually belongs to people and how it has a potential to become really something for the community too. So in the end, it was kind of summarized like this. So they draw some soil samples as visual comparison. So they are a metaphor, how the people perceive the layers of the landscape. So from all of these experiences, I just gave a little bit of an introduction to them. It's a complex history of more than 20 years, but I hope you got an idea of it. And these are the questions on which the Three Countries Park is still working on, and which is asking all the time. So how important are these storylines for the people, this landscape biography, to link people across borders, how this common history can really work out as a powerful tool to go beyond this administrative fragmentation. How can we recognize the common and shared culture? So all of these pictures belong to events and projects, as the projects I showed before, where people really simply come together and talk and discuss and bring the point of views, and trying to solve the question how this consideration of heritage and of cultural landscape can really involve people and reconsider, bring into new consideration of the use of soil and to sustainable development, which is carried out in a cooperative way. So one idea that we have to foster this, as I'm personally done this experience in the Three Countries Park, knowing, getting to know the place, And then I've been following the researches of the University of Liège. So I've been working with professor in Occhiuto, which is professor in Liège, and I've been working with the Dr. Anja Brul, which is the director of the Three Countries Park. And this experience has been really important and meaningful to bring together the reality of one place with the research in the university. So an idea to bring this in action is to organize a living lab in 2022. This would be organized in collaboration with the Cost Action. The Cost Action Underground for Value is an action that has been carried out in which the University of Liège and the Professor Occhiuto is involved. And it's involving more than 25 partners in Europe. And this is a very important initiative because it's bringing together experiences of recovery of cavities and underground built heritage in different places with different approaches from different points of view. It brings together different disciplines, and the platform, the Underground for Value Cost Action, is built to share this experience and to find out which is the best way to bring together the interested parties and to reintegrate what is underground and what is built in the underground in relation to the story of the people. So we believe, and I say we because it's actually that I'm presenting, but as I mentioned before, it's like bringing together the work of the Professor Occhiuto in the university and the work of Dr. Brul in the Three Countries Park. So I think I can say we believe that rediscover the underground landscapes. It's a unique occasion. It's a very special cultural element which is partially untouched, and it's still providing the chance to bring together beyond the administrative borders, beyond something which, as we know it on the surface, and to recognize a shared history and to work together from this shared history to work together on a common past. Which doesn't mean it's same. Let's say we belong to different places with our cultures, but we belong to the same landscape. So there are more layers on which we can work on, and there are some layers on which we are the same, and we can work together from these points to make our place, our landscape better, and our development more sustainable. So that was it from my side. I hope it was clear enough, and I hope there will be a discussion. And the topic, as said, is kind of new to me too, because I just came in the research from the professor, and Dr. Brul gave me the opportunity to know this case study, and it's my will to go on in a PhD to deepen this research, still bringing together the university research and the reality of place and all of its problems. So the everyday life. Yeah, that was. Thank you very much. I may stop the screen now. Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Thank you, Chiara.
Okay.
And then I would like to give first the floor to, I'm looking where he is. Yeah, Giovangiuseppe. Yes, I see you. Because we asked you to act as a discussant on the presentation of Chiara. So maybe I will first give the floor to you, and then we continue with the other participants. Yes.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very glad to be here and joining this interesting program you're carrying out. I find the talk proposed by Chiara Caravello extremely interesting and absolutely relevant. So thank you. I think it's very stimulating. Also, in relation to my personal research interest. I will try to figure out and to share with you some briefly some point, trying to provide some food for thoughts and fostering some debate. Also adding, starting from some keywords that I noted in the speech made by Chiara. What I think that is somehow the background of Chiara's talk has been the obsolescence of transformative processes. In this case, she investigates the transformation of the landscape triggered by industrialization, but every transformative process leads to the creation of signs and traces that remain in the landscape palimpsest. What is also interesting is that she underlined very well this relationship with the definition of the community. She said, we belong to the same landscape. And this landscape, with its traces and the underground spaces, defines a heritage that is the premise for a collective memory. I think collective memory is a good topic that she brought me to think about, because the collective memory is never unique, because it refers to multiple possible communities, and so it can change, referring to different relationships. During the presentation, Chiara has talked about the dichotomy visible and invisible, but I think something that can be had is the dichotomy foreseen and unforeseen. Gregotti, who died last year because of the COVID, wrote that the project is an action of foresight. But only recently, prediction, the evaluation of impacts, and consideration of what happens at the end of the life cycle of a transformative action are become actually some topical questions took into account in the contemporary debate. That's why I find very relevant the topic Chiara talked about. Also because it's always much more important to focus about the rest nowadays. After the 20th century, where they have produced a lot and cities are grown in a not controlled way, the architectural theory and also the research in architecture and landscape are focusing always much more on rest. And there is a book that is titled Recycle Theory, where Menzetti expressed very well the difference between waste and rest. The rest is actually something that results of a surplus generated by a system. So there is a process in act, and what is left over from this process is the rest. And nowadays it becomes the material of the project. I think that's very interesting in the speech that Chiara has made. Beside this bigger issue, maybe we can underline, we can underline two other themes that I think can help to discuss about her conversation. One is the underground that is put in relation to the memory. And this relationship is very complex and has to be determined in a more original way nowadays. The other theme, I think, it's the perimeter, that is a fundamental issue when talking about the landscape system. I've worked a lot about the topic of symmetries and figuring out what's the role that symmetries can have in contemporary city. And I think that there is no place like symmetry that is relating to the underground, and so to the relationship between the subsoil and the soil, the relationship between the narration that is happening on the soil, that is strongly related to what is in the subsoil. And most time, nobody cares about what is underground, also in that case. And for example, many cemeteries are not working anymore because of the pollution and the saturation of the subsoil. So what I want to say, some of the first images that Chiara has shown us describe this approach. Also, I would say, in looking at the landscape, how do we look at the landscape? And thinking that there is also some invisible parts is a quite interesting point, starting point for the research. And she made me think about an interview that I took in New York City with Melinda Hunt, that actually she is a visual artist and founding director of the Art Island project. I don't know if anyone knows what is Art Island. It's the largest potter's field in New York City. And when I asked her, what about your project? What's your aim? She told me, as a visual artist, I just can try to make visible the memories of those deaths that had no chance to be reminded. I think it's something very interesting, because the action that she's leading is working on two different steps, let's say. She's working on having actually having a public park in this island that has always been an heterotopia, so forgotten, hidden. New York is, all the New Yorkers don't know about this island, but instead, in that place, in that landscape, in that subsoil, is contained a huge amount of memory that is denied to the population, to the families of the dead ones. So I told you about the collective memory. I think it's something to point out, to interpret the landscape, because if I choose a community, I can choose a different collective memory to refer to, and the landscape can be described and also designed in different ways. As I told you before, I told you there is the theme of subsoil and underground referred to memory, but there is also the theme of perimeter. And also in that case, I would like to bring you an experience of my research to improve the discussion, let's say, to open up from these keywords. With the research team I belong to, we are working a lot on inner areas, the Italian inner areas, that are some parts of the Italy that are defined by a national strategy because of some phenomena like the abandonment, the depopulation, and so the weakness of the heritage. Between the different inner areas we have worked on, there is the Montagna Materana in Basilicata, that is a region in the southern part of Italy. And what was very important and came out at the beginning of the research we led over there was that the perimeter of the political side, the political approach to the act of perimetering, of make a perimeter, was not working at all, because they were not considering the structure of the landscape that is not so easy to perimeter. So there is also a sort of relationship between the kind of population, the kind of communities that you can find in a landscape and the different parts. The example that Chiara has mentioned of Three Countries Park is very interesting, in my opinion, because of this theme. there is no a line that makes the border. There is the identification. There is the focus on a part of landscape in the three countries part. I think that's something very important to focus on. Something I would like to add before making some questions to Chiara, maybe could be useful in relation, could be useful refer to my city. I'm living in Naples, and I think that Benjamin would say the same, because he described Naples as a porous city. The underground team is very rooted here in Naples. And some of the images that Chiara has shown us made me remember to, made me think about the Catacombe of San Gennaro. It's a place very amazing, all excavated in the tuff that was used to build all the residences. And then there is this process, no? I took the tuff and I create a new space, and this space that is somehow spontaneously being created, it's a new opportunity for the dense city of Naples right now. And there are also very interesting active process of participation by communities that are working on modifying and making known those places, trying to not lose and waste the memory that these places have. For example, they were the place where people went during the war or stuff like that, let's say. So there are many memories that came out through this relationship between the designers and the communities, the different communities creating different collective memories. About the theme of the underground, Naples, I think, could be interesting also concerning the metro line designs. It's something that shows how the overlapping of different layers, of different systems, of different networks can help to describe, to renovate also the meaning, to give new meaning to some traces that can be found in the underground. So also in that case, as in Art Island, thanks to Melinda Hunt, or also in the catacombs of San Gennaro, the theme is that from the underground came out, let's say, the opportunity to renovate the city, to renovate the community, the belonging. And nowadays, in the age of gentrification and of very fast moving, it's something very important to describe and investigate those hidden spaces, those forgotten spaces, in order to root in a land and to find some collective memory.
Okay, maybe we can, before you continue, we can also ask Chiara to reflect on what you have said, and then also the other people, because otherwise we might, yeah, have the ideas that we have a discussion with everyone. So maybe, Chiara, I don't know if you have any reflections on what has been said so far.
Yeah, thank you very much, Giovangiuseppe, for your intervention and for your examples that you brought. I think that maybe you focused quite a lot on collective memory and shared processes and participation. So a project which is shared with the community. I just would like to add that in relation with what you said, it is maybe very important to make a difference within a project which is imposed from above, whether data collection of opinions of people is asked or not, and participative process. Working on landscape for me, for us, doesn't mean to impose a project from above. It means to work together with the community, and it means that the architect or who is designing is not imposing one way. It's listening, as Giuseppe said, to different storylines, is able to hear them and to draw based on these differences, different hypotheses. These hypotheses are tested in processes and not in an imposed project, which is closed. So we are talking now about an open project, which is so shared projects and participation project processes bring together with them continuous projects.
Yeah.
Shared is true when it's continuous. Yeah. When it's a data collection one time, it's just not sharing.
Yeah. You indicated in your own lecture, Chiara, that you had 4 storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you described how you saw them. And then, let's say now, also the concept or the idea of collective memory was brought on. I was thinking, did you see a difference between how people make connections with, let's say, the underground world, the underground landscape, with the landscape as we see it above the ground, the landscape that you kind of appreciate or perceive when you're walking around? Is there a difference between those two, so underground and underground for you?
So the question is very interesting. It's not so, I can give general answer.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot, unfortunately, give a subjective answer because I was not the one taking the interviews.
Yeah.
And I just try to tell you about projects which have been done. But I guess in the results of that project, in the specific the one of the storylines, of course, people relate in a different way with landscape above, landscape below, natural elements, architectural elements. But I think the goal of the project itself was to show that each storyline has the same value. It's not because it's about architecture or about nature or about underground, or it's about what people experience, what people remember, but also what people live every day, what people need every day, and it builds up a story. Which, for this reason, we say landscape project is an open project with different hypotheses, because it's bringing together different storylines, and it cannot choose one.
Yeah.
Each of them is as much important as the other. And it's the same thing when we said we cannot consider above without considering below, because they belong together.
Yeah.
And what is important in the process of the project is to develop the consciousness which bring together these different stories.
Okay. Are there any other questions from or anyone else who has a question or a discussion that he or she would like to bring up? You can also put it in the chat, so then we can manage to give you the microphone or ask it directly. So don't hesitate to include it.
I would like to add only one thing.
Yes.
What because I'm not sure it was so clear before. What I think it's very important and interesting is to figure out which community we are referring to. We are giving space, we are giving voice. And somehow, for example, I have worked a lot on heterotopias, okay? But heterotopias has many memories, because who worked over there has some kind of thought about this place. Who has been closed there has another idea. Who was going and was attending something over there had another opinion, another memory. So the choice of choosing a different group, social group, it's very interesting in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it came out from the example of the Sanità, where there is the catacombs of San Gennaro, because it's the young people, very poor or not so not without degree or something like that, that are acting with the priest of a church to make a new story using the original one.
Yeah. Okay.
Only that.
Yeah. There is someone who, Giuseppe, you included, or you wrote in the chat that you suppose that collective memories are more constructions of meanings. I don't know if it's a question or just a statement that you want to
I was simply
give to
asking
us.
because I think we have a sort of misunderstanding what we mean collecting memories.
Yeah.
Simply, if we solve the problem of memories that can be also not memories at all, and maybe we can stimulate new communities because the landscape, cultural landscape is there. And sometimes, as I think Chiara clearly explained, sometimes there are untold stories, not emergent stories. So stimulating, creating, fertilizing new construction of meetings means not collecting memories at all.
Yeah.
And I think otherwise we risk to have a sort of manipulation of reality. And it's not what we should provide to the communities.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the risk that we as planners, architects, we face. The fact that we bring our memories to them. That's, I think, Chiara was trying to explain, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot.
I will switch it a bit. Okay, thank you. There is a question from Karel Wettok. Karel?
Hello. In 2019, there was in Ghent a quite interesting exhibition. It was curated by Rotor, and it was about the underground of Ghent. It was an eye-opener for a lot of people in the city of Ghent because it spoke about a collective memory, also an imaginary, but also a trauma. It's not always so positive, I think. And it was really pointing out the relation between the surface and the underground. But I have a very specific question. There are two terms who are used, and the first is built underground heritage. And I can understand everything you say about catacombs, but a lot of the things we see in the presentation, from my point of view, are a kind of involuntary constructions or things who has been made not as designed to be a space like a catacomb, but just a kind of rest. And there we have a huge problem in Belgium, just about to maintain them, or they collapse and they have enormous impact on the landscape. And that comes to my second question. I was very interested about the fact that this lecture would speak about territorial landscape regeneration, because what I was asking, where is the point of landscape and that's what I am interested in what you are showing today, because we saw already a lot about the potentials of all those voids to make energy landscapes. There has been a PhD just finished at the KU Leuven about it, or the trees, and that everyone has to restore this kind of natural equilibrium, but it's always like problems and a kind of problem solving, and it has no impact on the surface. So could you tell something more about this built underground heritage? What's your definition, and this kind of territorial landscape regeneration, how you define that? I think that are two crucial elements.
Yeah. Chiara, I think that are questions for you now.
Yeah, okay. Good. So thank you very much for your intervention, first of all. I will try to answer. I don't know if I managed to do that. Let's say built heritage is exactly how you said. It's not space that has been wanted. It's not a catacomb. It's a rest. But it was actually what I was saying before. What is actually building? Is building just creating something which is not there and it's filling somehow the surface, or is it also kind of a sculpture? I have a material, I take something from it and I build a void. This is also building, and it's, even if it's not wanted, does it mean that this is not building? This is a very, it's actually not an answer, I see that, but it's really a discussion topic. So it is a point which is being processed from researchers all around, because it's the way we consider it. We can either see them as architectures in which we can live, install functions and so on, or we can see them as rests. But it's a difference in how we see them, and I don't think it's really a difference in what they are, because they can be a rest and a built heritage. It's not that a rest is not an architecture. So, but it is a discussion point. It's not a sure thing.
And do you make a difference between spaces who are worth to keep and others who are like not worth?
This difference I can do for the things that are in my wardrobe. For the things that are in the world, it depends from the people who live in these parts of the world, and for the communities, the kind of communities, including not only people, but also biodiversity or so on, whether it's worth or not. It depends on what I said before, reading the place, listening to the place, to the people. And this is actually, I think, the first part of our role, not to think about an action, but to think not really if it's worth it, because I think it's too much of a powerful thing to think. We should think whether it's worth it or not, but to see if there is a possibility, to see if there is a process beneath it which just needs to be listened to, which just needs to be taken out, or if it's nothing there, no interest, no nothing. So I think that, and as for territorial regeneration, what you meant before, what is the relation? I don't know if I got exactly what you said. I think you meant whether there is a relation between landscape and some built spaces. Maybe you see the built spaces as some points in the landscape, which is again considering the landscape as a kind of a piece of land. But built places, as I said at the beginning, they depend on landscape. They are there because a resource is in the underground. And if this resource is in one place and in another place, they build up a network of resources which build a landscape. And the buildings, they are not isolated buildings. They are part of a landscape because they are based on the same reason. And that's why they belong to the same landscape.
Yes, but for example, in Holland, you see that there is a huge extraction of gas, and you see that complete landscapes are collapsing with the houses and everything. So it has a, I think sometimes it's very positive, and otherwise it's really kind of drama. So I think
yeah, I totally
that's very
agree.
interesting, I think, in that topic.
I totally agree on what you said. It's not always a positive thing, but that's why it's very important, this concept of the landscape consciousness or of the cultural landscape, because it brings together with the idea of the project some aspects which are strongly related with the consciousness that human and nature act together, that we are not looking at the landscape, we belong to it, we shape it. And you consider it in a completely different way. And just with this high, you can listen to it. You can see how you said before, whether it works or not, or whether it's positive or negative. But from outside, watching at it always from outside as in front of us, it's kind of, we don't communicate, and it's not possible neither to see whether we could go to experiment with it. We need to be within to experiment with, I guess. I don't know, I'm at the beginning, so it's just, I'm very pleased about the comments and discussion because it helps me to shape my ideas. And
Anyone else? No, maybe I have one that is, oh, sorry, Anja. Yes, maybe, yeah, you can go first.
Yes, because I have to leave the discussion soon. I would like to thank you first for the opportunity to present our 3 countries park case here. And I want to pick up on a couple of points that were interesting for us here. So I think, yes, the sites are controversial. Their use have been controversial. There are traumatic experience in war times are connected to these spaces, toxic deposits and stuff like that. But what is very interesting is what have been like a very problematic mining sites in the past now have turned to be very precious nature reserves and recreational areas. And often the people, they think that it's some of the slides that Chiara showed in the river valley or on the zinc mining sites, they think it's pristine nature, and they don't know about the whole history, industrial history behind it, or they don't even know how far the material travels and then how it connects us across the borders and so on. So I think what I found interesting, I think this topic of underground and above ground is really useful to change the view, to change people's views. And what is interesting for us in the cross-border context is how can we use this narrative and this changing of views to arrive at a common sustainable future, because we deal with many other topics, climate adaptation, water, across the borders, biodiversity, and so on. But it's for us, it is interesting to use this underground storyline to bring people together across the borders, and then to see what emerges, what can we learn from the past, how can we change the view for the future, because this is really very much needed to change old perspectives, to think in a different way, and to work across the borders, to collaborate, but also across the disciplines, to partner with industries and not have nature in one part and have industry in the other part. It's all a big mixture. Yep. And only if we collaborate together, then we can come to really sustainable solutions. So this is why we think it's a very interesting storyline topic.
Yeah, I think you tackle somehow 2 intriguing, interesting topics. That's the underground heritage or the underground landscape, independent. I mean, that's one. And then the other one, the transborder aspects, because it's it was not maybe that clear in one of the images, but it's a very fragmented landscape, and sometimes you only have to cross 10-20 kilometers and you're in another country. So if you work in that area, it is a kind of core characteristics of that area. And I think it's something what is probably also challenging to handle, because you might have different conceptions in words or in things that you use to work with, but also legal things might be different. So I think it's a big challenge to do this. And maybe that might bring me to the last question, because the topic of the series, as Connor also explained in the beginning, is where the disciplines meet. And I was just wondering also, what are then now for you the different disciplines that are involved in this? Because you explained somehow that you want to link experts with local people, but what are then the different disciplines? Because I think it definitely asks an inter or even transdisciplinary approach, but I'm wondering how you will set it up and who are but what are the disciplines that are involved in it or should be involved in it?
Yeah, maybe the different disciplines are involved indirectly, because we are, as I said before, it's like industries, biodiversity, different kind of landscapes, different architectures. It's underground, so it's geology. It's the topics are so mixed that they call different disciplines to work on them in order to deal with them even before solving them, even before designing them, just to understand them. It is necessary to deal with a lot of people coming from different points. So, for example, this river that I showed, where the industries made this agreement to refill the landscape and to redesign a different kind of landscape. This is an example how the different, not just disciplines, different sectors have to work together to redesign. Just so I think it's,
yeah. The reason why I'm asking it, it's because I also think it's not always about redesigning, but it can also have other kind of,
of course,
directions. So it has a lot of potentials, and I don't know if there are any Dutch-speaking. Yeah, there will be Dutch-speaking partners in the whole project, but you might find also inspiration in the reports that are written by the Flemish administration of spatial planning. They made a kind of reference or inspiration document, I think they call it, about the potentials of what you could do with the underground, not only by things that are already there, but how new developments could be done underground, because we are in lack of kind of space in Flanders then. So maybe that can give you some more inspiration. Rita, I see your hand is raised, and then maybe you can close.
Yes, thank you very much for the question and for the presentation. I would like just to make a comment. First of all, I have to thank Giuseppe Pascia because he is the direct inspirator of this kind of topic, because he's the coordinator of the coast action that we are involving in, and he knows very well the situation in Naples. We had the opportunity to go there to understand what the underground is for the culture of Naples. And I think it's a very interesting thing, not for the question of the only for the question of the type of architecture, but it's important to know that because it's also something that in this history make us able to understand that sometimes people as look at the underground because there was the only results that they had. And in Naples, it was also a question linked to a question of density of the cities, and it was the only issues that people had. So for me, it's interesting to understand that and to think today to all the problems that this kind of heritage makes now. But maybe because I'm Italian and in Belgium, the coal mining it's very strong, has a very strong link to crisis, to a very important accidents, and it's true. There is a very important heritage that make us aware to this problem. But I think it's important now to overpass also this kind of question and to look to all kind of architecture or amazing spaces that are in our underground. And then to relink our our mind, our way to think of that, not only as results, but also as an opportunity to relink us to our ground. Because in one of the slides of Chiara, there were plants with their roots, and there were one man without roots. And for me, it's very important to think of that because we are now in a world where people has not at all the idea to their way to be eradicated, to be in a place. And this topic for us, it's also at first a way to have a way to think to this new relation that we have to the redevelop, because we lost it. And it is a very important state that we have to reach, because after that it is possible to reintroduce this kind of heritage in other ways in our way to think to the earth, to the exploitation of our ground, our landscape. And the other question that I would like to just to overline is that if you have a really deep knowledge about landscape, you know that all the plants, all the elements that are on the surface talk about something that is the underground, because there is a reason linking between them. Today, in our way to be human, we have not the idea. We have lost this capacity to recognize this link, and it is a way, I think, important to reveal. And in our discipline, it's interesting to use the drawing, the way to redraw or research our kind of traces on the soil, to re-understand this kind of relationship that we have lost.
Yeah.
It's a part of our discipline, but I think that it's important to link this kind of operation with the knowledge of a geographer, because I think it's a very strong relation that we have to develop.
Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, for your comment. And I think that we probably have give everyone the opportunity to ask questions or to discuss. So I also saw it's 7 o'clock and that people are leaving, so maybe it's time to close this seminar, unless someone really has something urgent to say. I would like especially to thank Chiara and Giovangiuseppe for the discussion and everyone who contributed.